Thank you very much. Good evening. You can say hello back if you want. I've been a youth worker for nearly 30 years. I started in the youth space, in youth shelters and youth accommodation, in street work and in prison work. And I also now serve on the Youth Parole Board for South Australia. So myself and 4 other panel members hear all the youth parole cases in our juvenile detention centres, and also manage an organisation called Into Life that works nationally with young people at risk of suicide, drug use, homelessness, early school leaving, offending, and that's it. And one of our passions is this whole area of youth suicide prevention, because there are some interesting challenges that we're facing as a nation, particularly around social media and how we manage that. So I thought I might start by telling you a bit of a story. Do you mind? I like stories. Stories are good. Okay, so I have 6 children, and they're all my own with my wife's. And don't ask me about TVs and all sorts of things like that, because it's always what's asked. And I was taught to roll the condom on the banana when I was in school, and I left it there. So that's my answer, and I'm going to stick with it. So I'm really sorry about that, but if that's inappropriate, I'm hoping I'm not offending anybody. So one day I took my 6 children, or 5 of them, fishing. And one of them, Diana, I have twin girls. Diana had actually been stung by a stingray, and she was actually put in hospital, which it helps elaborate the story. So 5 of us, myself, went fishing one day. My oldest daughter's 13, then there was 12, then there was a 10-year-old son, then twin girls at 7, then a 5-year-old son. So we went, bought all the gear and went to this place down at Victor Harbour. And as we were about to organise everything, I said to them, well, look, you need to put the worm on the hook. And my oldest daughter, Lexi, said, well, I'm not going to do that. You're going to hurt the worm if we do that. I said, no, that's sort of the idea. She said, I'm not going to do that. You're going to have, and do it so you don't hurt the worm. And I said, hello. And so she said, well, I'm not going to do it. So I said, all right, well, I'll put the worm on the hook for you. And so we 5 of these little kids, we put all the hooks out, and we all fished. And Lexi miraculously caught this eel and pulls it in, and it actually, she'd cast out in such a way that the hook had gone through its beak, and she gets upset. She said, Dad, it's suffering. Dad, look what you've done. This eel's suffering. Get it off there. This is your fault. And she starts to cry and blames me and starts yelling at me because we'd gone fishing. She'd caught an eel, and this eel was suffering. So she starts to cry, and all the other kids had gathered round. And there was hooks, and there was line, and there was everything. It was chaos. It was unbelievable stress, anxiety attack, chaos. Sarah, my second oldest, said, well, look, Dad, I think we will need to work out how to do it. Why don't I operate on it and get this hook out? So she was 12. She got this knife and these scissors, and she says, I'll operate, get the hook out. Lexi's crying, yelling at me. Sarah starts to operate on it. Thomas, who was 10, said, Dad, look at this. I can grab its eyeball. So he grabs this, and he says, oh, look at its brains, Dad. Now that only inflamed, I'm saying, Thomas, stop it. That inflames Lexi even more. She's yelling at him and me because the fish is suffering because I took us fishing and it's her fault and my fault. So she's yelling, crying. Sarah's trying to cut the hook out with this knife and these scissors. Thomas is pulling the eyeball. So Julia, one of the twins, she said, she was 8, I think. She said, 7. I think we're all stressed. I think this is really distressing. I'm going to sing you a song. She said, I want to sing to you. I'm going to sing. So Lexi's yelling and crying. Sarah's operating. Thomas is pulling the eyeball, and Julie is walking around singing the song. Now, I wanted to kill something now because I did not know how to manage this. So then, now Diana would have been there, but she was in the hospital. And Samuel, my youngest lad, had seen me when we'd gone fishing before, get a stick to kill the fish. He said, Dad, I'm going to whack it for you. And he picks up this stick and he starts to swing this stick saying, let me whack it, Dad. I want to whack this fish. I got it all sorted out. Lexi's yelling and crying. Sarah's operating. Thomas is pulling the eyeball. Julia's singing a song. And Samuel's swinging a stick trying to hit this. Now, actually, there's a moral to the story. So thank you for humouring me. In my youth work, in all the years that I've been involved in youth work, you can actually typify behaviour to crisis with young people through that process. When something occurs, someone will be hospitalised. That will inevitably, in some way or form, there's some sort of medical intervention that needs to happen in life, and we need to acknowledge that as a society. Some young person is so upset that they cry and blame others for that and make that the response and the issue. Others become clinical and look at it in a clinical, responsive approach to try and deal with it in that sort of cognitive way, if you want to call it that. Others will sing. They'll actually, some would say it's avoidance, some might say it's actually a creative response, but there is that sort of response. Others get so caught up in the guts and the gore of it that they actually forget anybody else and anything else. They're right up in the middle of this. They're right there experiencing it. And others just want to attack it and get angry and fight it and hit it as hard as they can. And I learned a lesson as a youth worker to sometimes take the step back, not get caught up in it, but try and see how we can. I've been very passionate for a very long time about how we, as a community, connect. And Interlife, as a youth services charity that has about 250 volunteers across Australia, through a mentoring environment, our passion is mentoring, whether it's online, we actually manage an online Facebook group of 80,000 young people across Australia, or whether it's 20,000, 28, something, 18, it changes every day, I don't remember. Whether it's online, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's about connection. So what my role tonight is just to bring some current statistical analysis on the issues of bullying, depression, suicide and mental health issues, purely from what does our society right now currently look like and what are the issues that are facing our young people. Then Nicole is going to talk from a young person's perspective, particularly around social media, because social media is becoming such an issue and how young people are managing that or being managed by that. We're seeing some fascinating stuff nationally and internationally, and we also thank you for Lynn for also helping us understand the signs around suicidation and issues of talk and talking about it and recognising it. So have I got that right? Fantastic. So out of the Australian Bureau of Statistics just recently, that suicide now is the highest killer of males in Australia under the age of 24. So statistically, we measure suicide per 100,000. So on the latest statistics, around 12 young people from the age of 15 to 24 per 100,000 have actually successfully suicided. That's less for females, but now across Australia the highest area is actually amongst males under the age of 45, which is very concerning. But in the Indigenous community, it's about 30 per 100,000 young people. So we actually have now the highest suicide rate in the world amongst young people in the Indigenous community, which is a very concerning issue. So youth suicide in terms of actual deaths is about 12 per 100,000. Can go up to 14, but it's been stable around the 12 to 13 mark per 100,000. So the issue around self-harm, because we often misunderstand suicide against self-harm, because if there's been this phenomenon that's happening for a long time where young people are cutters. I don't know if you've heard this or not, where young people, for whatever reason, and particularly young girls, will raise a blade or something and are cutting themselves. In our online group of this 18,000 community, that is one of the most talked about areas where kids are cutting, because it makes them feel good. That's the language they're using. So the statistic is about 30% of females at some point are self-harmers at that level, 25 to 30%, which is a scary phenomenon in terms of what is occurring around that. How many people have heard that as a phenomenon, self-harming, as cutting? And okay, so you're familiar with that. So the issue of cutting it's not necessarily that they are suicidal. And the interesting research that we're finding is that even if a young person is suicidal, it's not that they want to end life, they just want to end the pain. So the conversations that we're seeing, and the research is now showing that a suicidal episode is not about ending life. It's about how do we help that young person through the pain that they're in. Pain most commonly is either through bullying, it can be through abuse of some level, it can be some sort of mental disorder or mental health issue They're the three most common issues that young people are facing that creates a depressive episode or creates depression, where the pain is so great that I can't cope. And we see it most online, where a young person will say to our environment, I can't cope, I need to move on from this. I just want the pain to stop. One of our advisors, who's named Professor Alistair Vance out of the Royal Melbourne Children's Hospital, and he supervised the adolescent department, all of his counselling now is online. He does nothing face-to-face, and he does nothing through telephone. Everything is through online. And we're seeing complete change in the way in our world young people are engaging with seeking support. So they would rather seek support online than they would ring, or certainly not going to see someone face-to-face. So let's look at some of the bullying statistics, because if we're now identifying that bullying is a key determinant factor, approximately 1 in 4 Year 4 to Year 9 Australian students, or 27%, report being bullied every few weeks or more often during the last, and more frequently during the last term at school. So 27% of young people would report being bullied on a fortnightly basis. Frequent school bullying was the highest amongst Year 5 students, and then at 32%, and at Year 8 students at 29%. 83% of students who bully others online also bully offline. 84% of students who were bullied online were also bullied offline. Peers are present as onlookers in 87% of all bullying interactions and play a central role in the bullying process, meaning their peers will watch. They might not do anything, but 87% are there involved in that, which is something that is as a society, we're still, and there's a lot of anti-bullying stuff. It's fantastic how there is such a significant move towards this sort of thing. Last year for us, when we first moved into this space of using social media, it's because a lot of our clients were using Facebook to put death notes, and we were seeing that happen. And also they were talking about being bullied and trolling behaviour. Now, as if familiar with the term trolling, it's been very commonly used. Trolling is where there are deliberately people who will go out of their way to abuse, to vilify, to be vitriolic, to be and name call, not because they dislike or even know the person. It's just fun. It's their idea of fun. It's an idea of, and the trolling behaviour through online and social media has been a phenomenon worldwide that's caused young people to take their life in a more significant way than we've ever seen before. So bullying is significantly linked to suicidal behaviour. And one of the significant signs, you might not, and by the way, 95% of young people will talk to their friends first before they talk to anybody else about suicide. So just as a preventative mechanism alone, we're actually really starting to strongly call for a change nationally about how we educate young people. This is why we're so excited to be doing this, because in the past, suicide wasn't talked about. We were worried about copycat suicides and triggering, and we are very concerned. As an organisation, that's something we have to watch all the time as an online environment, because we actually manage a group where kids will talk about suicide and want to talk about it. But we had unfortunately a 14-year-old lad jump in front of a train in Melbourne just recently, and that night young people started to talk about it. We delete those posts, we don't allow those posts, but it can create a triggering environment where a person will become suicidal because of the pain and the depression and the reminder this is so hard. And so the management of that is critical from our perspective. But I don't know your environments, I don't know whether your parents, youth workers, concerned people. As we talk about it, there are the triggering points and the identifying points and the language that we need to be aware of to be able to seek and give and offer support. So bullying is something that's obviously a very significant issue around how we deal with that and how we respond. Now, how have I gone time-wise? Are you watching my time?
No problem.
Okay. Is that including questions or then questions after that?
Questions?
So I'm doing well.
You're doing all right.
Okay. So when we talk about mental health, and this is another important area, we know that depression is a significant contributor to suicidation, and we now know that 84% of young people who have depression and are suicidal would have spoken to their GP. And there's been a significant, over the last 7 or 8 years, change in the way GPs are responding and being educated. And Lynn could talk about this far better than me. I don't know, I know you won't, but there's been a real change in the way we're educating GPs because of that statistic of GPs within the 3 months of a suicide would have had some sort of contact with the young person and would have had some sort of involvement through that sort of diagnosis of a mental health issue. So again, mental health or depression is an area where we, as a society, are doing some fantastic work in supporting young people and identifying that and getting treatment or support. So nationally, there's some fantastic programs like Headspace, which is a clinical counselling response where young people can go there face-to-face. It's a youth space, so it's created for that. Online, they're actually now providing e-Headspace as a counselling online environment. Lifeline have moved to online, as has Kids Helpline. So young people are taking that up as a way to get therapeutic support, which we've seen has been a significant change and shift. I mean, you might not remember this. When I was talking to Cole, Chelsea and Vonnie, who are also volunteers. Hello, ladies, thank you for being with us. Driving all the way from Melbourne today. 6 years ago, we didn't have smartphones. So but now, all of our online stuff, I think it's about 90% of young people who engage with us is through their smartphone. So everything has changed in the use of technology, and Nicole's got some really good statistics around how social media is changing the interaction in the world. And I mean, we know that we often say that social media is an oxymoron, because how can you, through that, be social and interactive? But it is an incredibly powerful form. So statistically, just some issues of mental health problems. Mental health is a risk factor for both self-harm and suicide, we know that. Evidence suggests that more than 90% of people who present to hospital with self-harm have a mental disorder, the most being common is depression. A history of mental illness, or particularly again depression, as well as the presence of more than one or more mental disorders are also strong predictors of suicide. While not all young people who self-harm or contemplate suicide have a mental health problem, these behaviours do suggest the experience of psychological distress. So when we look at the issues of depression, anxiety, depressive episodes, and that can be an immediate issue or it can be long-term. Again, they're things that we always have to be aware of and watch for. The other area is, of course, sexual abuse, and we've talked about that. And the amount of conversations our clients are having with us about that and the interrelatedness with suicide is incredibly high. And again, you might know the statistics, but the suggestion that 1 in 4 females have had some sort of abusive experience, and 1 in 6 males. Now, that's what's stated. Some would say it's more, some would say it's less. But in terms of that effect on suicidal behaviour, we again see that as an indicator that we are then watching for their long-term health and mental health and or suicidation. I think I've said enough statistically and about where we're involved. Are there any questions? Now, we're actually going to have some questions afterwards, but if there's anything pressing particularly now, I'm happy to take a couple. No? Wonderful. No, I didn't give you much time. Yes?
Yes, I'm just interested in what you'd suggest for parents who have, early teenager, 12, 13, 14-year-olds who are being cyberbullied. What can parents do?
That's where Nicole was going to talk that through to a degree. No, Nicole is a very reluctant public speaker, and she's our marketing manager for our suicide prevention program. So I'm going to hand back to Neil, because we can have a bit more time for questions, and then if we haven't answered it, then we'll come back. That's what I thought we might do. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
You can applaud me if you want now.
Yeah.